Oh, welcome to another episode of Reflections that we definitely want to have and fulfill in our own mind with the mind of God, with the Holy Spirit's mind. And of course, such reflections will always lead us to demonstrations of Christ mind or any awakened mind, giving a perspective how to come home right now, this very day, and have that experience that the journey that was believed has taken so much time is in truth over, and in truth was never a journey. That realization within the awakened mind that even the idea of journeying home was just an idea of dreaming the awakening. But dreaming the awakening is not the same than being the awakening, being in the awakening right now. And so we are using these demonstrations of extension of pure mind, of awakened mind, as it is given in this jewel message demonstration of living awakened Christ mind, called A Course in Miracles, a message from out of time, a message from my own higher mind, Christ mind, given me very personally and inviting me to remember what a reflection in the light coming from there's one truth, and truth is true and nothing else is true. There is no opposite to the truth. And everything that is realized to acknowledge the truth, or let's even better say, restore the truth, is really considered the miracle. This is a course in miracles. And so we were already using a couple of episodes, starting with the beginning of the introduction that Jesus gave to each and every one of us believing to journey home, and informing us that there isn't really an opposite to the love of creation, the love of God, and that every idea of, let's say, an idea that would still have an opposite, like love and fear, just needs to be looked at in order to find out that fear is not of God, that any path or idea of fear will never lead us home. And so it is very not just consoling, but reconfirming to know that coming from that thinking of opposites, that the opposite of love is fear, as he states here in the introduction of this course. But what is all encompassing doesn't have any opposite. The all encompassing can have no opposite. And if what is all encompassing, that is maybe another expression of creative thought, of the mind of God Himself, we are coming to a certainty and clarity that nothing real can be threatened, and nothing of my own making, the unreality of human perception of a world scene seemingly outside myself. Nothing unreal exists. And in that acceptance of those two premises, herein lies the peace of God. That this is the acknowledgement that I was only dreaming the journey home, but that dream was just a self-made idea, invention, fabrication in the mind, but had never a true source in God's mind. In God's mind, the prodigal son, the Son of God, has not left him. In God's mind, the Son is still the perfect creation of Himself, of the Father Himself, and cannot be anything but what the Father is. Did you ever look at that reasonability and the uncompromising nature of what such a recognition in mind is offering us? And if we are coming and utilizing the workbook of A Course in Miracles in order to remember that, I was just sharing that in a meeting within our German brothers, that this lesson, like the lesson 225, and that God is my Father and His Son loves Him. I love God. And that in this lesson, I'm basically shown that I cannot not love Him by just acknowledging that what I was inventing, I was fabricating in my mind, is accepted and acknowledged as unreal, as literally not having anything to do with reality. And in that acceptance, the stillness of the peace of God, of God's mind, is opening up and showing to me, yes, it is true. God loves me, and I too truly love God. And in this acknowledgement that all I was dreaming of separation, of pain and suffering, of conflict and war, has to be over now. There cannot be a dream of separation still being in work and having real reflections. If it is acknowledged what is singularly true, it's the whole dream sequence, the whole separation game is over. And I hope you're feeling to be a winner in that game, since there are only winners. And the winner is the one who remembers the truth, because he knows that there is no loser. The way for that recognition is wide open, feeling that peace of God, feeling that stillness. We follow it in peace together, Jesus says in lesson 225. And you have reached your hand to me. So that is Jesus speaking to you, to me, very personally. He literally says, brother, you have reached your hand to me. Or God has reached His hand to me, and I will never leave you. That is a promise. That is why we are utilizing examples from the past, like the demonstration of Jesus Christ as the historic Jesus Christ, teaching and healing, His service, His demonstration of how to live that awakening experience, or having that contact with God, is valuable by knowing that others have gone before you, and those others are in truth the same one singular mind, your own awakened mind, your whole mind. And there's no possibility that they could leave you. They are with you. They will be with you until this year is over, until you have no need anymore of perception, until you don't have any use anymore of experiencing yourself, seeing yourself interacting with your own images of your making. He is present and here as the Christ light. The resurrected Christ is pure light consciousness. It doesn't have anything to do with the body. It is the truth about the body that it isn't here at any given time. It has no reality whatsoever, but it is a tool, a device for restoring communication, for finding each other, for reaching each other, that we can share healing of our minds in the mind, and to recognize at the end of the road who we are, that we are as God created you, created us all in the same creative thought, and that we haven't separated ourselves from our source, that we are still one. He confirms in the lesson itself that you are one, we are one, and that it is but this oneness that we seek. We don't need anything else, we don't look for anything else, we don't want anything else. Just this we seek, this oneness. As we accomplish these few final steps, those few final steps are steps of forgiveness, are steps of asking for healing, asking for the correction, receiving it in its totality, seeing how the illusionary part is disappearing until the self identity, the concept of the self, has no power anymore and is seen as dissoluted literally in the truth itself. These few final steps which end a journey that was not begun. Here it is, of which we are talking about. This journey in truth has not begun. We have never begun this journey that we are realizing now has ended. This is awakening. It's awakening from the dream. It's awakening from any idea in time-space, being in time-space, having any value in time-space. This is a gift that you are given, I'm given from out of time. This is a gift that we are willing now to value above any man-made gifts, any gifts as we know them, that have been appreciated or still categorized as value in the world. It is immeasurable, this gift, because it is the foundation of the remembrance where we truly belong, that we do not belong in a world of separation, in a world of perception, and that we have never left that world capitalized, that is our home, our eternal home, our true source, the mind of God. Welcome in this remembrance. Welcome for yourself, being willing to give everything, to go for any lengths in order to experience that, to have that true, to live it, to have it as an living experience, which means how it is showing you in the present moment that what you made up in your mind and all the stories have no substance, are not even there. And to realize that is corrected thinking. And a corrected way of thinking, of course, allows us a corrected way or a correct way of perceiving. That correct way of perceiving is a miracle-minded perception. And so I'm gonna go and continue of demonstrating with you after these first 12 miracles principles, which we did in the last 2 episodes, and see in the continuation also what Jesus would add on in the original notes he gave to describe Helen Schackman, to some of these, let's say, core principles, basic understanding how this works and what such a mind has as its fundament for his, let's say, new interpretation of his own little dream. And if we're gonna go to the Miracles Principle 13, that a miracle or miracles are both beginning and endings, or in singular, he expressed it in the original version, a miracle is a beginning and an end, an ending. And it thus abolishes time, is the same expression of what we already were sharing and teaching ourselves with this lesson 225, that this journey is already over. Abolishing time means you realize that time is over. If there is no time and time is over, there is no space either. If there's no time and no space, then how could your appearance here, your identity as a human being, have any reality? Any objective reality is literally released, vanishes in this acceptance of what that miracle does. It's a beginning and an ending. It begins literally your new life, your newness of freedom, and it is the end of the suffering. It is the end of time. It is the end of the feeling of littleness, of separation. It is always an affirmation of rebirth, which seems to go back, but really goes forward. It undoes the past in the present, and thus releases the future. See, everything is only released in the present moment. The self-identity, that surrender to the light of God, is released in the present moment. And so, of course, all the future is released with it. 14, miracles attest to truth. That was a little bit different through the edition. Here it is expressed, and in the edited version, that miracles bear witness to truth. That's the same, right? They are convincing because they arise from conviction. Without conviction, they deteriorate into magic, which is mindless and therefore destructive, or rather the uncreative use of mind. And so in different parts of this course, till the end in the teacher's manual, Jesus is teaching us that every assertion of self-will, of a will separate from our creator, our source, is literally a magical thought, is magic. And so we are here to let all magic be corrected, bring it literally to the truth. Each day should be devoted to miracles, so that man could use it creatively and convince himself of his own ability to create. Time is a teaching device and a means to an end. It will cease when it is no longer useful for facilitating learning. This is what we were saying, you're using the device of your perception as a body identity just to fulfill your journey that you believe you are still on, which is a journey of healing of your mind, a journey of forgiveness, a journey of awakening from this dream. And he gives then an instruction after the next miracles principle, which is miracles are teaching devices for demonstrating that this is no more blessed to give than to receive. They simultaneously increase the reserve strength of the giver and supply the lack of strength in the receiver. He added on in the original version, be very careful in interpreting this, and gives an instruction. And here is something that this entire course from the beginning, what these miracles principles are directing us to. It talks about the purpose that we are having, that is given us, a new purpose. And he says that the purpose of this course in miracles, is integration. So we are fulfilling here purpose, and this is just perfect as an answer of what is forgiveness, right? Why would I need forgiveness? What does forgiveness do good to me? And that's a good word to use, integration. Everything is being integrated to recognize that it is part of my mind, it is part of me, because I'm the maker of everything that I see and perceive. And therefore, it literally is me in my own thought, you in your own thought. I told you that you will not be able to use it right until you have taken it, to have taken this course, right? This is a required course, he says in the introduction, right? Everybody, every mind will make it in one or the other form, because this course's purpose is integration. It has to be, all memory that is still seen as a word has to be integrated in order to recognize everything and everyone as what? As love itself, right? As what love created as itself, because that is how he speaks about you. Love created me like itself is the lesson that I'm here to learn. And after he continues further down, then after you have passed the course, you will accept and keep it and use it. He uses these three perspectives. You will accept the entirety of this message. You accept what this purpose of the course is, that everything is you and is perfectly integrated. You will keep it in mind. You will remember it, and you will use it. You will use it in your relationships. You will use it in any form given how you teach yourself. And that is the final exam. He uses here the expression, which you will have no trouble in passing. Midterm marks are not entered on the permanent record. I love it how he puts like these jokes within his original message. 17 miracles principle. Miracles are the absence of the body, or transcend the body. That is how it was then edited. So originally said miracles are the absence of the body. So the transcendence of the body, of course, lets us recognize that the body isn't even here at any given time, the absence of the body. And miracles are sudden shifts into invisibility. What becomes invisible? What becomes invisible is literally those symptoms that have to be believed make oneself sick or are already the invitation for death. It is a sudden shift into invisibility. You have a sudden shift or in your perception that it isn't what you thought it is. The problem, how you identified it. It isn't here, it isn't there. That's a sudden shift. If you have such instances, remember how blessed you are, because those are the miracles with which you are blessed. So they are sudden shifts into invisibility away from lower order reality, that lower order reality that is considered how the ego interprets everything. That is why they heal. That's why miracles heal. Next miracles principle. A miracle is a service. 18. It is the maximal service that one soul, he says here, or that one can render, that you can render to another. It is a way of loving your neighbor as yourself. And those are the words of Jesus Christ. We know it from the Bible. It's like to love your neighbor as yourself. That is really where you become love itself, and you have an understanding and a recognition of what love is, and you love your God and you love your Father as yourself and as He loves you, but you have to love your neighbor as yourself. The doer recognizes his own and his neighbor's inestimable values simultaneously. Where 19 then says that miracles rest on a law and order of eternity, not of time. And that was then edited in a different way in Miracles Make Minds One in God. They depend on cooperation because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. Miracles therefore reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. Now, from in the Urtext, he gets basically to a very interesting perspective where he says that miracles are an industrial necessity. Industry depends on cooperation, and cooperation depends on miracles. So the moment you cooperate, and you cooperate with those directions as given you from out of time, with, let's say, these instructions, how to complete this course, you are actually you live in a cooperation with Him. And any industry, like you could even see how this is used on an economical, political level, depends actually on cooperation. Right? There is no industry in your world, in your economical world, that doesn't depend on cooperation with somebody, with a line of production, let's say. Miracles are an industrial necessity, he says. And miracles are cobwebs of iron. They unite human frailty to the strength of God. So these are perspectives that kind of are very interesting. And then he corrected because Helen wanted to change iron to steel. And his correction was then that is put in the urtext version under parentheses. No, steel would not be a better word. Steel is very useful, but it would have to be tempered by fire. Iron is the raw material. The point of miracles is that they replace fire, thus making it unnecessary. So fire, you could also say, this is like the medium in which something is almost forced into a different molecular state. And we don't even need that effort and force anymore. It is made unnecessary. It replaces the fire itself. We can stay with the raw material. The rawness itself is where you could say the light energy comes through. The nature of everything comes through. And he used then as this 22nd miracles principle that miracles are natural expressions of total forgiveness. What is forgiveness? We have that in 5 paragraphs expressed in for these first 10 lessons of the second part, lesson 221 to 230. And we hear that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. And you hear that the miracle does nothing. It just remains still, waits, and knows that there is nothing to do. It doesn't judge. It learns not to judge. And so a natural expression of the totality of forgiveness in which the mind realizes there's nothing here to forgive. It never became anything in separation, is what the miracle is. Through miracles, man accepts God's forgiveness by extending it to others. The second step is inherent in the first because light cannot tolerate darkness. There is no darkness in light. Light dispels darkness automatically by definition. And then he gives an explanation instruction, it was called again, that miracles are associated with fear only because of the fallacy that darkness can hide. Man believes that what he cannot see doesn't exist, and his physical eyes cannot see in the dark. This is a very primitive solution and has led to a denial of the spiritual eye, which always depends on light. Remember the biblical injunction, may I never forget that thine eye is ever upon me, beholding the evil and the good. And then he goes from there that there are 2 stages, one of a lower and one of a higher, which are involved in the escape from darkness. And he calls it the recognition that darkness cannot hide. And this usually does entail fear. And secondly, then the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. And this brings then escape from fear. So I'm gonna go a little bit further down where he brings it then that the miracle reawakens the awareness that the spirit and not the body is the altar of truth. A miracle reawakens, right? We have that in the edited version as Miracles Principle 20. Miracles reawaken the awareness that the spirit, not the body, is the altar of truth. This is the recognition that leads to the healing power of the miracle. A miracle rearranges the order of perception and places the levels in their true perspective. This heals at all levels because all sickness comes from confusing the levels. Beautiful. And that arrangement, that rearrangement of the order of perception is absolute necessary. This is why we are dedicated to lessons. This is our dedication to the mind training of A Course in Miracles, to the necessity of let everything, including oneself, be changed. So that was in the edited version then written as the Miracles Principle 23. And what we were mentioning before as miracles are associated with fear only, that is a Miracles Principle 22nd. Now continuing with 24, miracles enable you to heal the sick and raise the dead because you made sickness and death yourself and can therefore abolish both. He adds on, you are a miracle. This is where we find this expression that is basically a self-recognition and reflects our self-recognition, not to leave the miracle as something or a power seemingly outside ourselves. No, you are a miracle. I am a miracle. And this is the fact of the matter. Capable of creating in the likeness of your creator. Everything else is your own nightmare and doesn't exist. Only the creations of light are real. So that's a very beautiful expression of how to bring that to a level where the separation is literally corrected and seen as being corrected, so that the creative thought is only and the only reality to be accepted and acknowledged. And the 25th Miracles Principle here in the edited version says then the miracles are part of an interlocking chain of forgiveness, which, when completed, is the atonement. Atonement works all the time and in all the dimensions of time. So an interlocking chain of forgiveness is, we can understand that everything is interconnected and everything is an invitation and an opportunity to forgive, to see it through the inner eye in a completely different way, isn't it? And you know it when you have that experience, because there is just joy there. There is in that joining also a joint recognition there. There is nothing that would stay still separate or condemned or in the need of anything that, let's say, would keep us in that pain of separation. In the original version, he brings in there that there's an only legitimate prayer by saying, Lord, heal me. Lord, heal me is the only legitimate prayer. This also means, Lord, atone for me, because the only thing man should pray for is forgiveness. He has everything else. If when you have been forgiven, you have everything else. And if you have been forgiven, then you have everything else. So this happens to be the simplest of all propositions. Beautiful how he brings it, that my path within the human consciousness is really just to ask for that help. Just, okay, I'm asking for healing. I'm asking for the correction. I'm asking to be forgiven, to be shown that the meaning that I've given it and holding it in that place, in that reality, I can be liberated from that by my willingness to no longer hold on to it. But the power of that release, of that liberation, still comes from above, still comes from his mind. So I'm just gonna finish here up by sharing with you I am the only complete true witness for God. That's an expression that Jesus has given Helen here in the original version. I, Jesus Christ, I'm the only completely true witness for God. And I urge you to do also so that to examine my credentials. You haven't read the Bible in years, he says to Helen. You will be not only willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. No effort is wasted. I'm just giving here a little summary of what has been added on or is explained in this original notes, that Urtext version that has been edited and cannot be found in the newer edited published versions of the course. Here is a biblical quotation. If you are ashamed of me before man, I will be ashamed of you before God. And this is interpreted, that was a biblical quotation, right, as a threat only as long as you remain in the first step. But what it really means is that if you're ashamed of me or embarrassed by love or embarrassed by that message, you will project and therefore make it impossible for me to reach you. So it becomes a block in the communication. To be ashamed of him, to be embarrassed of what he offers. He says then, make every effort you can not to do this. I will help you as much as you will let me. So that is for all times offered and promised, that his help is there when we let him help us. And it is that simple. It is really just the acknowledgement, yes, I need help. Yes, I'm be willing to be helped, to be corrected, and to direct this call for help out of time to the awakened, resurrected Christ consciousness. And he will be there to help you, to help us. Thank you for accepting that. Thank you for being present here with me, reviewing those Mirror's principles. Thank you for allowing this teaching and guidance given us from out of time to be the pavement, literally, on that way of realizing that the journey is over, that we are only in that recognition of light experience at home and real, and blessings to you wherever you are, wherever you find yourself. Blessings to all of you, because all of you goes home. So with that, we leave it for today. Thank you. I love you with all my heart. See you from out of time. Bye-bye.